So I invite you, as always, to just close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. We're just going to take a few moments here, nothing fancy, but let's just set an intention to become more present. And as we do so, we can just use the mechanism of being aware of the breaths we are receiving as a means to help us become more present. The inhales and the exhales, let's just on our own take a few moments to go there. I always like, when I think about receiving breath, to take it as an opportunity to become aware of the source of my breath. Perhaps choose to express some gratitude for it. Perhaps use it as an opportunity to connect with Source in a way that works for us and feels good. And to simply remember that we are indeed spiritual beings having human experiences, all of us. That is the perspective that we take here. And I want to talk this evening just a little bit about the concept, everybody's favorite concept of the 15 that we use. Any guesses? That's right. Take responsibility. Take responsibility. Now, just as all of our concepts are multidimensional and stretch in different directions, I want to focus on just a few of the ways that we tend to mostly use this concept here in spiritual workout world. Take responsibility. So ultimately, what that means is that if I'm responsible for everything in my life experience, even if I didn't consciously on purpose do the thing that I'm experiencing, take responsibility means that I'm not a victim of anything. Take responsibility means, along with another belief that we'll talk about, that I am here for a reason. We are here for a reason, which means we are in any specific present moment of our lives for something, which means that everything is for us, which means we cannot and are not victims of anything, regardless of what it might seem like. So, spiritual workout's all about being very practical. On a practical level, what does this concept start to look like? So let's say you're having an experience where somebody has done something and you are some degree of miffed about it, either because it's a big, gigantic deal and you've been screwed over in a big way, or it's something less than that, but very annoying that you can't seem to quite let go of. So if we are taking responsibility for what shows up in our life, even in a situation like this where it seems pretty clear somebody else did something, a jury of our peers might even convict that person and sentence them to some kind of punishment. That doesn't change that we're not a victim of what's going on if we're choosing to take responsibility. So what can we do in that situation? I find that virtually every time we have the experience of somebody doing something to us that we don't like, in whatever degree that we don't like it, that if we're willing to look at one of our other concepts called beliefs matter, that we will be able to find an old belief that we have that created the experience that we're having that we don't like. This person did me wrong. The very first question is going to be, well, does it feel familiar? Have you been in this place before? And almost every time the answer is some degree of yes, in which case then let's just go back. If we're really going to take responsibility, find the belief that you have that would create this dynamic that probably didn't happen just once. Then you're on an entirely different trajectory, mostly because you're no longer focused on the other person. Now you can say, wow, perhaps that person didn't really do anything to me after all, other than what they sort of had to do, because I'm creating a reality based on a belief system I have whereby this terrible thing would happen. So taking responsibility when somebody does us wrong, almost every time we can point to a belief or a set of beliefs that we have about ourselves, about other people, about life, about how things work, that would add up to the experience, the unwanted experience that you're having. Now, sometimes we're dealing in life with things that seem bigger, that are completely out of our control. Maybe there's a quote unquote a natural disaster that happens, or something that clearly, a sudden loss through death of a person that we know and love and care about, or a sudden change in work, something that's larger, that seems like, well, I wouldn't have created this. This is terrible. This is awful. How am I responsible? Well, again, the idea is about being responsible for how we respond to what's happening in our life. In other words, again, if we're going to move out of that stance that I'm a victim of this natural disaster, well, I myself today am fine. My house did not get ruined. I'm still okay, and yet I'm in the midst of this thing that I want nothing to do with. But again, if we bring in now this other idea that I'm here for a reason, there are no accidents, I'm not a victim of anything. Well, now I'm in a situation that's not at all to my liking. And if I'm really willing to take responsibility for it, and I want to generate some growth, just like I would do in the previous example, by not blaming anybody for what's going on, by looking at an old belief or set of beliefs that I had that I now have an opportunity to change. And now that I've grown through that experience. Well, on this side of things, when it's an event more in the realm of these larger, completely out of control things, then we bring in the concept, we are here for a reason. There are no accidents. So if I'm here for a reason, witness to this disaster, well, who do I have to be is this question that we ask in this situation. Who do I have to be, or what muscle do I have to grow or develop here in order to navigate to peace, to where I personally feel comfortable, at home, that I truly am where I'm supposed to be. Now, the answer to that is almost always, in fact, I don't think I've ever seen it not be something that often doesn't come to us right away. We are like, I'm going to have to think about that for a minute. What muscle do I have to grow or develop here in order to just get to a more peaceful place, trusting that that is homeostasis. That's where we want to be, right? So who do I have to be? What muscle do I have to grow or develop? It might not come right away. And when it does come, it's going to be something that is really rather simple conceptually. Oh, I have to be more patient. I have to show more courage, something like that. And the last thing that I'll say about it is that in almost every case, once we land on what that thing is, and maybe there's more than one, but let's just assume for the purposes of this conversation that there's one thing. I need to just demonstrate more courage. When we nail that and land on that, we will almost always have a sense of, oh yeah, and that's not entirely new for me. In other words, this has come up before. I've not been as courageous as I believe I can be. I have been, quote unquote, meaning to work on my courage, things like that. There will be some sense of, oh yeah, well, that's not an entirely new idea. Maybe it's been on the back burner for a year or 10 or 3 or 4 decades or more. I don't know. But it will have that degree of familiarity. So these are two ways that this concept, take responsibility, often shows up in our everyday spiritual workout world. And the last thing that I want to say about it, and then we'll get to what you want to talk about, is if we are willing to move through life taking responsibility for the things that show up in our lives, let us also remember to take responsibility for the good, juicy things that show up in our lives. Maybe they're small things like walking down the street and somebody smiles and nods and sees you and recognizes you and just is being friendly and saying hello. Wow, I'll take responsibility for that. People are smiling at me, or you are happy where you're living. You're happy with your work. You're happy with your friends. You're happy with your relationships. You're happy with uh, any number of things where you just say, I like that. That's nice. I like that. That's nice. I like that. That's nice. Take responsibility for that. It's a really good practice, and it makes it ultimately a whole lot easier to be willing to take responsibility for the less juicy things. So with that, I invite you to take a nice deep cleansing breath or two. Hold on to any of the good stuff. Release any of the not so good stuff. And let's come back and talk about this and whatever else you want to talk about. Oops.